So today I'm going to demonstrate the flow of our created program, which is the Rent a Vehicle. Rent a Vehicle is a direct booking rental program that allows user admin to input rental informations and stores it into the database. It offers two options, which are the daily rental and the hourly rental, according to the customer's usage at their convenience. So let's start. This is the login page. Rent a Vehicle only supports one user that operates the entire system. So let's try to log in. As we are logged in, you can see the main menu. The main menu contains three buttons: the customer, vehicle, and transaction. If we click on the customer's button, it redirects to the customer's registration. In the table, you can see the number of customers and its information as well. In the left side, it allows user to add or register more customer to the system. You can also edit and delete. So for the vehicle, it is pretty much the same. You can add vehicles information according to its type. You can register your vehicles either daily or hourly. You can also edit and delete. In the transaction, you can see two buttons: rent and retrieve. Rent is for renting vehicles, which you will be able to select two options: daily rent and hourly rent. Retrieve is when the vehicle is due for return. So let's try renting first. The vehicles that you have registered to the system earlier will appear according to its type. So for the daily rent, you can see the vehicles that you have registered here is a vehicle model, and its rental fee will automatically display. You can also select customer name, starting date, security deposit, and how many days would a customer would rent this vehicle. Sample 2. And lastly, the advance payment. Click OK. So it is saved. And if the vehicle is already rented, the vehicle's status will be automatically changed into not available. In the hourly rent, the process is also the same. You can also see the hourly vehicles registered. So here, set the customer name, starting date, and hours, security deposit, and advance payment. Click OK. That will be saved. And its status will also be changed to not available. So for the retrieve, you can also choose which type. So for example, for the daily rent, here in the drop down button, you will be able to see the rented vehicles that you have entered to the system earlier, and its information will be automatically displayed. So here we have the customer's ID, date borrowed, days elapsed, security deposit, advance payment, total due, and status. As for the status, it refers to the security deposit. The admin should decide whether to refund or forfeit such. So if the admin decides to refund, the amount of security deposit will be automatically deducted for the total due. While the admin decides to forfeit, the amount of total due will remain as is. So if you click on OK, so it is saved here in the table. So the rented vehicle in the dropdown will be deleted, but its information will be added to the table. So if we try to exit, go back to daily rent. Here we can see it is no longer here. So exit. So for the early retrieve, it is pretty much the same. You can also see here the rented vehicles, the customer ID, date borrowed, hours consumed, security deposit, advance payment, total due. So if I set it into forfeit, let's try and click OK. Here we can see that the total due remains as is. So if we exit and enter again, the rented vehicle is already deleted. So yeah. Once the rented vehicle is retrieved, its status will be set to available again so that it is ready for upcoming rentals. That's pretty much it for the rent a vehicle system. Thank you for listening. For the rent a vehicle system, we used PHP MyAdmin for the database. In here, we've created 8 different tables, which are the customer table, daily vehicle table, hourly rental table, hourly vehicle table, the rental table, retrieve daily table, retrieve hourly table, and lastly, the vehicle table.
So, hello, I'll be talking about the borrower's class and the vehicle class in the car rental system we have. So, to first start, I'll be talking about the borrower's class. The first thing we'll see in the borrower's class would be the fields. Basically, the fields compromises the things that make up this class. So, what makes up a borrower? So the first thing that makes up a borrower is the name of the borrower, which has a data type of a string. The second field in the borrower's class is the driver's ID. The third field is the borrower's ID, which will be an integer to make it easier to determine. And the fourth one is the contact number, which is a string data type. And lastly, the email will be also a string type. There are 3 constructors for this class. The first constructor only needs the name to make an instance. So the second constructor needs 2 parameters, which are the name and the borrower's ID. The third constructor needs all the 5 fields needed in the class. So these are the name, the driver's ID, the borrower's ID, the string contact number, and the string email. So after the constructors, I'll be talking about the setters and getters, which are the methods already of the class borrowers. The first one that I might be talking about would be the get borrower's ID. So the function of the get borrower's ID is that it will return the borrower's ID of that instance. And then the next one is the set borrower's ID. This method helps in changing the borrower's ID of that certain instance. The next one is the set name. This method, it will be able to change the value in the field name. So the next one is the set driver's ID, wherein it will accept the driver's ID as a parameter, and with this it will set the driver's ID for that certain instance. The next one is the contact number, which is it will accept the contact number as a parameter, and it will change or alter the value of contact number field. The next one is set email, which accepts email as a parameter, and it will be able to change the values on the email field. The next method is the get name. So get name is similar to borrower's ID, except this time it will return the value in the name field. The next one is get driver's ID, which is similar to get borrower's ID and get name as well. So it just returns the value in the driver's ID field. The next one is the get contact number, which is it will return the contact number that was set in the contact number field. And lastly, it is the get email. It will return the email that was placed in the email field. Let's go to the borrower's Java. In the borrower Java, most of the interaction with the database is done in here. If I were to add a customer in the database, the code is actually placed on the borrower Java. Let's first start with the add function of the borrower Java. The first thing that's gonna happen is that it's gonna create an instance of a borrower. And then after creating that instance, it will get a connection with the database. After connecting, it will proceed to an SQL statement. The SQL statement will be the one responsible in adding the data that was inputted by the user to the database. So the next one is the edit function. So in the edit function, makes it easier for the employee to change the information regarding the customer. So the first thing that it will do is picking out the customer that needs to be edited. And after picking out the customer that needs to be edited, it will get the information of the customer. So after getting the information of the customer, it will proceed to the SQL statement, which is updating the customer table. So this time the input is taken directly from the input boxes seen here. So after taking the information from the input boxes, so the database will then record the update concerning a certain customer. The last one in the borrowers is the delete function. So in the delete function, we are going to delete the information or the record regarding about the customer. So the first thing that needs to be done is to select which customer that needs to be deleted. The process of selecting which customer is the same as selecting which customer that needs to be edited. So after selecting which customer, it will then proceed to a MySQL statement and deletes the customer from the database. And then it will be executed and then updated, resulting in the deletion of the record of the customer. So that's all for Borrowers Java. So the next one that I'll be talking about is the Vehicles Java. So in the Vehicles Java, there are 5 fields in the Vehicles Java. These are the plate number, which has a data type of string, the vehicle ID, which is identified using the integer data type, the vehicle class name, which has the data type of string, the vehicle color, which is also determined using string, and the status, which is also determined by a string. There is only one constructor in the vehicles, and it requires all the fields in the vehicles class. The method in the vehicles Java will be the getPlateNum, getVehicleID, setVehicleID, getVehicleClassName, getVehicleColor, setVehicleClassName, setVehicleColor, getStatus, and setStatus. And let's first start with getPlateNum. In getPlateNum, it will only get the value of the plate number in that certain instance. The getVehicleID is similar to getPlateNum, but instead of returning the plate number, it will return the vehicle ID. The next method is the setVehicleID, which requires the ID number as a parameter for this field in this instance. The next one is getVehicleClassName, which is similar to getPlateNum and getVehicleID. It will return the class name. The next one is the vehicle color, which is similar to the other 3 get functions. This returns the vehicle color of this class in this certain instance. The next one is setVehicleClassName. It will require the vehicle class name, which has a data type of string. The value of field class name in this class will be changed using the value from the parameter. The next one is setVehicleColor, which is also similar to setVehicleClassName. It will set the color of the vehicle of this class. The next one is the getStatus. It will return the value in the status field. Lastly, the setStatus will require one parameter, which is the status in string data type. The status will then be set with the value of status from the parameter. So, time to show you the functions in Vehicle Java. So, as you can see, this is how the screen looks like. It will have the add function, the edit function, and the delete function, which is similar to the Borrowers Java. The first thing that I'll be talking about is the add function. In the add function, it will first determine if the type is hourly rent or daily rent. After that, it will make an instance. For example, if the vehicle has a type of hourly rent, we'll proceed to making an instance of an hourly vehicle class. The next thing that needs to be done is to get a connection with the database, which is followed with the SQL statement to place a record of that vehicle in the database. In the second part, it will still ask to get a connection with the database. It will then proceed to the SQL statement. This SQL statement inserts a record in the vehicle table. Unlike in the first part, it inserts a record in the hourly vehicle table. So in this part, it then starts to record the information needed in the vehicle table, which is the vehicle ID, the plate number, the color, the model, the status, and the vehicle type. And this is the part where it does the method of storing the information regarding the vehicle to the database. And after executing this, the table in the program will then be updated, showing the information of the newly added vehicle. The daily vehicle has similar operations with the hourly vehicle, but the difference is that it will create the instance of a daily vehicle instead of an hourly vehicle instance. And it will insert in the daily vehicle instead of the hourly vehicle table in the database. That's most of the contents in the add function. The second function is the edit function, wherein the user selects which vehicle needs to be edited, which is shown in this statement. And after that, it will then record the newly vehicle type. After doing this operation, it will then proceed to saving a copy of the previous vehicle type from the table. The other information such as the vehicle ID, the plate number, the car model, the color, the rate, and the status will be taken from the updated version of this instance. It will then proceed to determining whether the updated information is an hourly vehicle or a daily vehicle. So in the hourly vehicle, it will then proceed to update the vehicle table, and the update is then executed to make sure that the information that has been recently been inputted is being updated in the database. It then proceeds to asking whether if the updated vehicle has a different vehicle type from its previous information. If it does have a different vehicle type, then it will proceed to inserting a new record in the updated vehicle type. If not, then it will just update the table of that certain vehicle type. And the last thing that it needs to do is to check whether the updated instance has a different vehicle type. If the updated has a different vehicle type from its previous, it will proceed to deleting the record of that vehicle from its previous vehicle type, which in this case is deleting from the daily vehicle. That's for hourly rent. The daily rent is similar to the hourly rent, but this time table that it is being inserted to or being updated to is the daily vehicle. And the possible chance that the vehicle type was not daily rent, then it will be deleted from the hourly vehicle table. That will be all for the edit function. The last one is the delete function. So in the delete function, it will first try to check if this vehicle is currently not being rented. If it is not rented, it will then proceed to prompting the user whether they would want to delete the record of that vehicle or not. If the user picked yes, then it will proceed to connecting to the database. Then after connecting to the database, it will then first check whether the vehicle is an hourly rent vehicle or a daily rent vehicle. If it's an hourly rent vehicle, it will proceed to an SQL statement wherein it deletes the vehicle from the hourly vehicle table. If it's not an hourly rent vehicle, then it will proceed in deleting the vehicle from the daily vehicle table. And after doing this process, it will then proceed to deleting the vehicle from the vehicle table. And the database will then be updated, which will then delete the record of the vehicle from both the vehicle table and delete from the table of what rental type the vehicle belongs. And that's all for vehicle class.
So to continue where we left off, so here we have the transaction part. So it's split into four parts. So we have the rental, which daily, the retrieve daily, the hourly retrieve, and the hourly rental. So all of this follows the interface, which is the renting in our file, and only have the transact method, which is present in all in hourly rental, the hourly retrieve, the rental daily, and the retrieve. So in our code, we have here the hourly rental first. So in here we need components. So all of these functions are present here in each file. So load customer and load vehicle. So load customer is for the drop down box. And load vehicle is also for the drop down box. So both here in the design, you can see here the vehicle model and the customer name. That is where we get this too. So in here we have the load vehicle, the function. We have the try. So this is where we connect. This is also where we connect the file or the program to the database so that it can do some querying. So also the same with the load customer. Here we have the transact. So in here we have here how we get how we add a transaction into our database. So here we get each value from the input boxes and also the drop down boxes. So here we in this part here we have the connection. Below that we have how we add this data into the table. So in here we get the fee and R. Then in here and the last part here for the function is how we update the status of the vehicle from not available to available. This goes the same with the rental, which is the daily part. So it has the same uh, method and how we add the data to the table. So it has also the same functions like the load vehicle and the load customer, and also with the method that we have in our interface, which is the transact. So same goes. First we have the insert. First we get the data from the inputs. Then we try to do the statement in which we can add this data to the table. And here we have the values. Here the last part is the same with the hourly rental, where we update the status of the vehicle from available to not available. So this part here for the is how we add the drop down box and how we are able to set those text box into non-editable if the status is not available. And here we have the button. So the button here exactly do the transact method or the transact function, so that every time we press that button or click it, then this will be run. So on to the next is the retrieve. So the early retrieve and the retrieve the daily for the daily. Say is just like this, the same. Same goes with the rental and the early rental. The only difference here is that we use days, not hours. So here, we get the in here we get the drop down box for the rent. This is the function here. So these are the statements so that we have the connection, the statements, and the result of the querying. So in here, for a table update, it's how we update the table in the right side here. In the design here, we can update the table using that function. And here we have the same function and math or method that we also use in the rental, since it uses the interface of renting. So it's both the renting and the retrieving transactions that we follow the interface. So here the same goes. So we try. So in here we get the inputs, then we do the connection. So in here, if refund is equal to selected item, then we do inserting into the database. Uh, this depends whether we do a refund or a forfeit of the deposit that we made or the customer made. So it's either we give it back or we add it to the total fine or payment that he or she does. In here, we update. So in here, the same goes with the rental. So in here, we change the status from not available to available. Then we delete the record from the rental and add it to the retrieve. So it's the same with the early retrieve, except we use hours, not days. But it has the same method in which first we get the data, insert into the database, then we update the status. So that's all. So we have here, we always do the try and the catch every time we have a function, so that every time we connect to the database, it shows what problems we may encounter. So that's the extra topic that we have. So we use the database as a source of how we record the data we have. Yeah, that's all.
So this is the code for the login. It is very simple as you can see. It is just written in if and else statement. The reason why we added this is for a little bit of security to the system. So basically that's just it.